Everyone. So another episode of Arco Answers. So I think this officially makes episode 5. I've been out for the last couple of weeks. My goal is to do this every Wednesday at this time slot. So wherever you are in the country, I always say 11 a.m. Eastern, 9 Mountain. But unfortunately, the last couple of weeks had family medical issues, as happens in life, and haven't been able to get to the live broadcast like I would like to. But again, moving forward, we'll be here same time slot Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 9 Mountain. So also this week has just been really playing a lot of catch up. So I don't have a ton of content, prepared content for this week. So hopefully we'll get some comments and some live questions that come in. But of course, as usual, there are a couple of things that have come up this week that I want to address. And if we get some live questions, fantastic. If not, I'll just cover some of these prepared items. But first of all, I want to start, by talking about some of the things I'm working on either right now or will be working on in the next couple of weeks. And I think they're actually pretty interesting, at least for a government leasing nerd like myself. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is interviewing a gentleman by the name of Keith LaShier, and you've probably heard me mention his name a couple of times if you've listened, if you've seen other episodes of this, or you read some of my articles or whatever. Mentioned his name a couple of times. Truly, one of the thought leaders, the experts in the space of postal service leases. He and I were supposed to do a podcast interview. Actually, I believe it was last week, but again, due to circumstances outside of my control, I had to reschedule. So he and I will be sitting down in the next couple of weeks, and it really should be just a fantastic interview. So if you've ever had any interest in learning more about postal service leases, you've heard nightmare stories, you've heard wonderful things about it, whatever it is, he is the guy to listen to and to learn from. So I truly look forward to that interview, as he is just absolutely just a wealth of knowledge on that topic. So that's something that's going to be rolling out in the next few weeks on the GOV CRE podcast. So the other thing is, now this is maybe more of a long shot, but what I really want to do is sit down and have a conversation with a decision-making authority at the Bureau of Land Management. So why is that? So traditionally, if you're in the space at all, you're intimately aware of it. GSA will only honor or will only enter into fully serviced leases. Now, I say that it's a big generalization, but in 99% of the cases, that is the truth. Especially if you're in a competitive procurement, you're not going to get a lot of changes, if any, to the standard lease. So, again, if you operate in the space, something you're already very aware of. But BLM has done something interesting from an agency perspective. They've basically come to GSA and said, "Hey, look, we don't want fully serviced leases. We don't." And when I say they don't want fully serviced leases, they want all the janitorial, all the maintenance, all the other things. What they don't want, however, is for the lessor to be responsible for energy utilities, so gas, electric, things of that nature. I think the landlord still pays for water, if I remember correctly, but at least those big dollar items related to energy production utilities. So the rationale behind that was essentially we don't want to pay the premiums. So the premiums being, number one, the landlord doesn't know how much energy they're going to utilize as a tenant. So there is a premium built in whenever you ask a private sector owner to basically provide that as a stable cost. There's also the premium of you don't know as an owner how much those utility costs are going to increase in the future. So you have to pad the utility number. So hopefully this isn't a shock to anyone who might be watching this from GSA or some other leasing agency. Yeah, the numbers are padded. They have to be, and it's only prudent for an owner to pad those figures, because I think, as I mentioned on a previous episode, I've been working with a client pretty intimately when it comes to like looking at the net operating income of his assets. And the one thing that, is a consistent story is when we look at, what his operating costs are increasing at, it's somewhere in the order for a 10-year lease, 30 to 35%. Now, granted, that's not all just utilities. That includes janitorial, snow removal. I mean, everything. But in general, his costs have been going up 30 to 35%. And in the last iteration of what we reviewed, his CPI adjustments, which is what's provided for under the GSA standard lease format, have provided for maybe 10% escalations. So you have actual costs increasing at 30, 35%, and you have CPI adjustments providing a 10 to 15% escalation. So clearly there has to be some padding of the numbers. So what BLM has said is, hey, look, we don't want to pay this premium. We want to pay a strict pass through. So we'll contract for services, not for services. We'll contract for utilities ourselves, and that way, not only are we foregoing that premium or those premiums associated with that, but we're also allowing our occupants, the actual employees occupying the space, we're allowing their behavior to dictate what the utility costs are going to be. So turning off the lights when you leave a room, shutting down your computers when you leave, making sure the air conditioning is shut off when you leave the building or turned up, or however you want to look at it, but allowing for those behavioral changes to actually have some sort of financial result on the cost of their leasing program. So that's really what I want to talk to BLM about is, to truly understand, why did they make that move? What did it take to make that move? But also, what have their results been? What have the results been? I mean, are they actually getting the results that they were seeking when they decided to go in this direction? And if so, then, why are other federal agencies not moving in this direction? And my assumption is it has something to do with the admin burden associated with it. So instead of just paying a rent bill to GSA, which is basically a direct deposit, that's scheduled, agencies are having to pay that bill to GSA, for the rent, but they're also having to then, contract and cut a check to the local utility. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're managing not only, the benefits they're receiving, but also the perhaps additional cost or the additional work associated with actually having to go out and contract for these services and then pay on these other services separately. So I want to talk to BLM and kind of get their side of the story. And if it's been truly a beneficial move for them, maybe there's some mechanism we can put in place to try to get that information to GSA. I'm assuming they're having these conversations at a national level, but just to get other agencies to consider this, because it truly would be a benefit not only to the private sector building owners, it'd be a benefit to the agencies themselves. So something I would like to kind of a future project, I guess. But first of all, I want to get the story from BLM. So, I mean, looking at some of the prepared content, some of the things I've have been coming across over the last week or two, I know I've beaten to death real estate taxes, whether it's on the podcast with Diana Curran, where we've kind of did a deep dive on real estate taxes and the importance of them, or it's been, I think it was my last Arco Answers episode, where we talked about if you were buying a property in California, how the GSA lease kind of has this catch in there that you really have to be aware of. So if you haven't seen that episode and you're looking to buy a property in California, a property that has a GSA lease in place, so it doesn't have to be with GSA, it doesn't have to be with SSA or anyone. It's just anyone who uses the GSA lease format. There's some good information in that last episode for you that basically just says, hey, you need to go check this stuff out, because it could greatly affect your your NOI right out of the gate. And it's just because of the funky way that, California treats their real estate taxes. So if you've ever done business in California, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I can't think of what it's called right now, but everyone doing business in California knows exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a specific got you in the GSA lease that you absolutely have to be aware of. So go watch that other episode. But one thing that I do want to talk about now regarding real estate taxes, and this is something that it breaks my heart every time I hear this. And it's sophisticated organizations, it's mom and pop organizations, it's everyone. I'm hearing it across the board, and I've heard it twice this week from clients. Whenever we go to talk about real estate taxes as their lease is coming up for expiration, they're realizing now that they haven't followed the GSA process for billing for real estate tax, adjustments. So what does that mean? So essentially, if you're not familiar with this process, as you're going through the lease negotiation process, you establish a real estate tax base. Like, what are the real estate taxes expected to be, or what are they currently, based on the most recent bill. And then every year, when you pay your real estate taxes, you are supposed to submit your paid receipt to GSA. And if real estate taxes have gone up, GSA will cut you a check for the difference. If real estate taxes go down, then you have to cut the government a check. That sounds less ideal, I understand, but I do typically advise people just stay on top of it. Generally real estate taxes are going to go up. So, even in the years where they go down, just pay the check, pay the pass through, because what's going to happen is if you wait for the year that real estate taxes go up again, then, and let's say that's, there's been 4 years of, going down and then hanging steady and then going up above that baseline, then, GSA is going to say, hey, great, thanks for submitting this tax bill. By the way, what's been happening the other 4 years? And either way, you're going to be made whole, or the government's going to be made whole. So just stay on top of it. But what's been, what's leading to this conversation is the fact that a lot of people I've been talking to, and like I said, 2 clients this week alone, it's only Wednesday, are realizing they have not been submitting their tax bill on time, or at all. And, in one case, it's been the last 2 years. In one case, they don't know that they've ever submitted the real estate tax bill or the real estate tax pay. And that's an issue, because these are situations where taxes have been steadily increasing, and they've been leaving money on the table. And it's just one of those things where, if you don't deal with GSA every day, it's something you don't think about. And because otherwise you have other mechanisms in your typical leases where you get reimbursed for those real estate taxes. But under GSA, you have to seek it. You have to show them evidence. You have to get reimbursed. So the one thing I would like to offer, and it's not a paid for service. I'm so bothered by how frequently this happens, where owners are leaving money on the table. If you send me an email, my email's terrible. I apologize. It's chad.becker@arcorealestatesolutions.com. Luckily, I'm better at doing GSA leasing than I am at, creating email addresses. But so chad.becker@arcorealestatesolutions.com. If you send me an email, and you can just put in your lease number and your real estate taxes due date, I will set up a series of automatic emails that come to you, and just reminders like, hey, don't forget, per this clause, you have to do this. You have to submit your tax bill. So once you pay it, submit your paid receipt, and I'll spell out the process if you want me to. But really, it's really just a reminder email of, don't forget to do this, because if you do, you're potentially leaving money on the table. And it's very simple. I have an automatic email generator. So once I get your lease number, obviously have your email, I can just set it up and it'll happen like clockwork. I never have to look at it again, but it provides you value in the sense that you have a built-in reminder other than maybe the calendar reminder that pops up, on your calendar, and then you're busy that day and then you forget to do it that day and it's just whatever. Somehow it still gets missed. So let me help you remember to do this, just because I'm so just sick of hearing these stories where people are just not unknowingly leaving money on the table. So just a way of trying to help out there. Um, the other thing I want to talk about, and this because it's it's affecting me on 3 deals that I'm currently waiting on right now, and if it's affecting me on 3 deals, then I'm sure it's affecting hundreds of other people out there. But it has to do with leases that have already started. I'm sorry, lease procurements for SSA. This has become a real issue over the last, I guess you can officially say several months now. I have 3 active SSA procurements going on right now where we submitted final proposal revisions, FPR, over 6 months ago. And we're still waiting on a response. And, I keep talking to GSA or to the brokers who are involved. And, the problem is we can't find out, as a ownership representation group, we can't find out, do we need to start pursuing leasing that space out to someone else? Do we continue to hold on because we're the winners? We really have no clue. And that's part of the GSA process. They can't inform you if you've won until they have all their ducks in a row. And then they can't inform you that you've lost until a lease is signed. Obviously they don't want to say, hey, you've lost, go lease your space. And then the winning party has already moved on, leased their space out, and they don't execute a lease. Well, now they have to come back to you and whatever. It just causes a lot of issues. So the problem that I keep being told, so from one LCO, I've been told that they've basically reorged their lease, or what's called an occupancy agreement. So basically a step necessary in order for GSA to execute a lease. It's the agreement between GSA and the actual occupying agency. So it's this background document, occupancy agreement. Typically you would never need to know about it, except for in this situation that I'm being told that's what's holding up a lot of these lease procurements, is GSA's not getting these occupancy agreements back signed in time, or in any kind of reasonable time. Like I said, it's been 6 months, if not more, on some of these projects that we've submitted final proposal revisions. And what happens in 6 months? Typically, you could make the argument, especially earlier this year, when the Fed was saying they were going to go up 25 bips a quarter on interest rates. You could have rising interest rates, so you could have changes in that environment over 6 months. You could definitely have changes to the marketplace in 6 months. So an offer that was made final 6 months ago, you now have people sitting here waiting for answers, and it's not just SSA, but it's predominantly been SSA lately as the occupying agency that's causing even further delays beyond the GSA review of final proposal revisions, which has also been just ridiculously delayed from what I can tell. So, and the other thing, so I was told, okay, number one, SSA is doing a reorg as far as it relates to their occupancy agreement approval process. The other issue I'm being told is just regarding the what some people may call lump sum reimbursement. Technically, it's the reimbursable work authorization approval, so the RWA. So think of that as a check that goes from SSA to GSA in order to cover any overages above and beyond the tenant improvements. So anytime the government wants to pay for something lump sum, typically if the money's coming from another agency, there's this thing called an RWA involved. So apparently that process is also at essentially a standstill, whether that's SSA just doesn't have the money, or SSA is, again, due to some sort of reorg or whatever, the process is not moving as quickly as it used to, which is a shame because it never really moved that quickly. But that's also becoming an issue. So whether it's the OAs or the RWAs, I don't know. I'm hearing from two different stories from different people, and actually different stories from multiple people, even beyond that. And but those seem to be the two front running stories, and maybe it's a combination of the two. I don't know, but the reality is, if you're sitting and you're waiting for a response to a FPR that has been submitted on an SSA project, just know that you're not alone out there. This is something. I mean, I've talked to brokers representing GSA through the GLS contract, and they are incredibly frustrated with what's going on because obviously this negatively affects them. They're brokers. They're waiting to get that signed lease. I'm having these conversations with LCOs. LCOs are absolutely just beside themselves because of these delays, because they have workload. They want to get projects done. They want to get this one off their desk, and they can't because there's whatever the cause is. There's these massive delays within SSA. And I've also been told it's kind of like a hangover, if you will, from the partial government shutdown that still hasn't been fully resolved yet. So whatever the story is, if you're working on an SSA procurement, whether you're about to submit FPR or you've submitted FPR, months ago, just know from what everyone's telling me, there's really no clear end in sight. They haven't seen that pipeline open back up. I'm hoping that's not true. I'm hoping we're finally seeing some progress, but I can tell you personally on the couple SSA projects I have going on, no, it's still, everything's still at a standstill. So that's really it for this episode. I haven't received any questions that I can answer live. Obviously, that's still the goal. I'd love to be able to get some interaction and be able to answer these questions, live, other than just things that I've been dealing with kind of throughout the week and getting questions from clients or hearing and seeing what they're experiencing. But if nothing else, hope some of this information was useful to you. I'll be back next Wednesday, 9:00 Mountain, 11:00 Eastern. And until then, hope you have a great Wednesday, a great week, and we'll talk soon. Take care.